Now I've got to go and find.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SEO Fight Club. We are going to continue Charles's presentation today because last week we managed to only get to slide number one. So if it goes like last week, today will be all about slide number two. All right. With that, let me switch to live chat and say hello and remind people to ask questions. And if you have anything urgent, I simply ask you to ask your question early because on rare occasions we don't have enough time for all the questions, and I'd hate for something urgent not to get addressed. So if you have an urgent question, please ask it early. All right, let me pop out the chat here and let me show my professional skills by allowing Charles to share his screen. And is there anything anyone needs to announce?
Mm,
Nope. All right, then Charles, take it away.
I'm showing my professionalism by not being ready to unmute myself and or share my screen. All right, here we go. All right, so
Charles to share his.
There we go.
So I'm sorry, folks. I'm gonna have another mini rant. This is what derailed us last week. So I'm looking through so I've cooled off a little bit. So sorry, Lee, I'm not that upset anymore. I was originally initially really annoyed because I saw a link to an article in LinkedIn, and in my haste to put together this, I realized, oh, okay, they were referencing an article from months ago. So I'm like, all right, it's not a new thing. It was posted as if it was new, but it's not a new thing. So let's just get right into it. So it was a link to this article. It's a Search Engine Journal article. I clipped out the date here, but it was like April, I think. And it was John Mueller clarifies 404 and 410 confusion. He made the statement Google doesn't penalize websites and difference between 400 and 410 and just really started going on it. The problem I have with these articles, it always gets me worked up, is that John Mueller didn't really, he did answer the question. He answered the question exactly as it was asked. The problem is, as always, it's phrasing. How are people asking these questions? Is he answering the question exactly? And then what are we drawing from it? So, did I mess up? I messed up and I put these things out of order. So his answers were technically correct. So someone had asked if maybe someone made a comment, a site had dropped, and someone made a comment that, hey, maybe Google penalized the site for all the 404s out there. And he says, Google doesn't penalize for 404s. And then he made the claim that those drop out of the index, though, which that statement has so many problems with it. So he is technically correct on the first part. Google does not penalize 404s and that you don't get a penalty applied to your site if you have 404s. And I saw Lee shaking his head, and he's absolutely correct. No, Google doesn't drop things. That doesn't drop 404s out of the index. I've had 404s on websites for years. If there are links to the page, Google's going to keep crawling that page and to keep discovering it. And then he gets into the difference between 404s and 410s. He's saying that 404s versus 10s is minimal. So for SEO purposes, they're really the same thing.
No,
And
they
it's
aren't.
a great example. It's a great example how technically he's, from his point of view, what he's saying is technically accurate, but it's horribly misleading.
Hold on. I think
He's answering from a place where he academically knows what these things are,
Yeah.
but he's never actually tried to use them in the context of SEO for a business.
Yeah.
And so when you actually get in and do the SEO where these things are involved, they are not the same.
So I see what's going on here, Charles. You don't actually have a mini rant. You just have slides that are going to poke Ted and are going to poke me into rants. I see what you're doing, but go ahead and continue, sir.
Yeah, I call what what John Mueller said there is a failure of imagination
Yeah.
because he could not imagine a scenario where the distinction would matter, but I
Mhm.
can.
Yeah, and
Yes.
so I knew what you were going to react to that second one because of, use of 410s back in your ecom days. And I can tell you the 404 problem is it doesn't penalize, but you can have sort of this site-wide quality drop if you have too many of them. Technically not a penalty, and yet kind of feels that way.
So this reminds me way back in the day when we first started talking about duplicate content and the canonical tag. And I remember being at conferences and Googlers just being at the front, just exasperatedly saying, duplicate content isn't a penalty. It's not a penalty. And they're right. It's not a penalty, but it's a filter. And it filters act just like penalties, but they're not technically a penalty. And so were they being obtuse intentionally, or were they just so focused on, well, no, technically it's not a penalty. They cued in on the fact that we're saying the word penalty and they want to correct it and say, no, 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 we're not penalizing people for this. When
We're
they
just
they
not showing them.
we're just yeah, we're not yeah, Ted, I don't hate you. I'll just never speak to you ever again. It's like, what's the difference? Is there a difference? So yeah, they do these things all the time, and really this kind of comes from a place where folks see things like this in their search console, and I always say that 404s, and I say I'm already giving Ted agina by and this is actually one of the better sites I've looked at. Here's a site where they've got 167 pages indexed, 600 non-indexed. So that means there's about, 780 pages. Most of them are not indexed. Some are 404s, some are redirects. And what I always tell people is, yeah, 404s in and of themselves, having a 404 isn't the problem. 404s and these non-indexed in general are usually symptoms of a greater problem. And this takes me back to the good old days when Google used to have missing titles, missing meta descriptions, short meta descriptions, long meta descriptions. And I use that all the time, not because I was worried about my title tags being short or long or missing, but it usually, if they were finding pages with missing meta descriptions, it usually meant that Google was finding pages that shouldn't be indexed. Or duplicate meta description. That meant they were finding, again, a set of pages that probably shouldn't be in the index in any way, shape, or form. It wasn't the meta description that was the problem. It was the fact that Google was finding this page. And that's typically what happens with these 404s. If you've got a bunch of 404s floating around, or if you have a bunch of these not indexed in general floating around, you probably have an internal linking problem. You probably have some kind of infinite crawl going on your site. You've got pages that shouldn't be indexed that you don't want ranking, getting crawled regularly by the search engine. The search engine's wasting, what is this, 3/4 or if not more of its time crawling pages that can't be indexed for one reason or another. And if that's not going to hurt your SEO, I don't know what else would.
Just
Now,
as a
when
oh,
I
go ahead.
see a chart like this, what I often will find when I'm looking at a client is I can go back in time and there will be a stair step where the level goes down, and I'll go back in time and there'll be a stair step where the level goes down. And if you take those dates and, really investigate what was happening at the time, one of the most common scenarios is website redesigns. You've abandoned all of your old URLs. You've made all new URLs. So all your old ones that you never took care of are now in this gray bar. Um, and so yeah, this problem gets bigger and bigger and bigger, especially if your company does a website redesign every 2 years.
So, Ted, back when you were doing your ecom stuff and you were 410ing, products that were out of stock, when Google came and crawled the page, saw the 410, how long before that page disappeared from the index? Typically, I know there's a range.
Usually by the next day. It
So,
was it was fast enough that we could use it promotionally.
right.
And yeah, it was amazing. So the use case where 410s are great for SEO and ecom is where you have a lot of different products that are technically the same thing. So you might have 50 different sterling silver amethyst bracelets. So they're all a little different, different shapes, different cuts, but they're all basically that keyword. And because of the site filtering, you can have at most two organic search results, and you have 50 of them. So you have all of these products queued up for SEO behind the two that Google will allow to appear in the search results. When those two are sold out, Google will continue to show the sold out pages because they rank best.
Right.
But we don't want to show sold out product, especially when we're in Q4 or Black Friday. So we 410 those, and it shows the next two that are available and in stock. And when they sell out, we 410 those and we show the next two. And then, of course, after Q4, when we get more inventory in, we turn them all back to 200. Okay. Google finds them, they pop back in, and we're ready for next Q4.
So let me give you the second half of my question. So the first half is 410s, and they're almost out immediately. When Google came and visited a page of yours that had a 404, how long until it was out of the index?
Oh, months, years,
Yeah.
years.
So just that particular thing, when you're looking at one thing works in hours and one thing works in months, clearly they're not equivalent.
Yep.
Just that right there says that the statement that they're equivalent is
Yeah. Calling the difference negligible is comical. It just
right.
means that he's never used them.
Yeah.
And I've seen that with a lot of the Googlers when they give statements. They clearly aren't trying to rank any sites on their own. And not with any stakes to it. Maybe they'll have a blog. I have a blog. Okay, yeah, but are you actively trying to rank for anything?
Mhm.
And the answer is typically no. So this was a good little rant for me, and I knew that it would get you guys excited as well.
I didn't see you rant at all, sir. I see
No,
what it did.
yeah, no, it was well, I didn't say it was a mini rant. I didn't say it was my rant.
All right, I'll read the fine print next time.
All right, let's have some fun with AI images. This is part two because I had a little fun with AI images part one, like maybe 5 months ago. I think it's at this point. It's been a while. One of the things I want to do is I've spoken to lots of people, either via email or Teams, Discord, person to person, and I'll find out that often folks don't know things that like I might think is obvious or Ted might think is obvious or Lee might think is obvious. I'm like, you know what? I want to do some things where it's just like kind of, I don't want to say basic, but just really basic, like something anyone could take, anyone could use. And then some of the weird things I've run into it as I've messed more with it. So let's talk about AI images. Specifically ChatGPT. ChatGPT is great for simple images. If you have to make a quick image for a site, there's no reason to go someplace and steal someone else's image anymore. I know that used to be a common thing. There's no reason to have to do that because you can go into ChatGPT and say something as simple as give me a photorealistic image of an exterior AC unit with the text label on the image, energy efficient AC units Alabama. And boom, there we go. And there's the AC unit, and it's on a little platform. It's got the name words on it for optimization, for image optimization. You can put that in a blog, maybe even put it on a GBP. And it took me all of like maybe 2 minutes to do this. You can even get a little more creative. I can say, give me a photorealistic image of an exterior of a vape shop with a text label on the image, Philly Vapes. The problem with this is you start doing stuff like this. Now, you don't want to put this like on a GBP or something where you're now saying, oh, this is what my store looks like, because now you're getting into a little bit of a gray area. And at the very, very least, you're going to confuse your users because if they go to your physical store looking for this, they're not going to find it because it doesn't look like this.
I wonder if ChatGPT can make working QR codes. So if you gave the prompt a URL, it could put the QR code in it too.
That's cool. I should give
I
that a shot sometime.
Yeah, I don't know if that works or not.
I have overlaid QR codes on top of images, on videos, and things like that. But it'd be interesting to see if ChatGPT could just create one. My guess would be no, my guess would be it would create a QR code, but it wouldn't work because I don't think they have the back end system to do any kind of redirecting or anything. But Um,
Well,
but yeah,
it's easy enough to test. You just
yeah,
need a phone.
yeah, for sure. So let's kick it up a notch. I gave ChatGPT the logo for a client. Here's the logo for an exterminator. So tell them do nothing with it yet. That's a little tip that Lee gave me because I used to drive myself crazy giving things to Google, wanting them to ChatGPT. I'm sorry, wanting them to just have it, and they immediately start trying to do something. Let me do something with this. And so I've learned that when you give them something and you don't want ChatGPT to do any processing, and this would be the same for Claude or Gemini or whoever, you give it to them and say, do nothing yet or do nothing with it yet. And of course, ChatGPT can't help themselves and say, got it, I have this. What do you want? Tell me what you want me to do with it. So it's still kind of doing a little something, but it's not doing any
It's
processing.
eager. It's eager.
Yeah. So there's the first little ChatGPT or AI or LLM tip is if you're giving it something that you want in its database that you want it to use in another prompt, just tell it specifically, don't do anything with this. And so let's say here, what else could we do? I say, give me a photorealistic image of the exterior home with an exterminator walking up to the front door. You see, I didn't even spell the right. Place the text label on top of the image, pest control, Mattawan, New Jersey, and place the logo for the capital exterminating in the lower right-hand corner of the image. And there you go, bam. This is a nice little image. Again, this would be perfectly good. This would be great for a blog post or some kind of exterior. I guess you could put this on a GBP. Again, if it's not you, if it's not, I don't know why he has like a regular backpack and not like a proper thing. Maybe there are proper maybe there are extermination kits that look like backpacks. But this is actually a really good image. It's very clean, very to the point. It's, as you can see from the prompt, it's not super complicated. You don't have to be super complicated with your prompts. We're going to talk about that the next time on part 3. So let's try that again. This is a logo for DNR carpet and flooring. Do nothing with it yet. Understood. And I said I decided to apply a little pressure. I said, give me a photorealistic image of an interior of a carpeting and flooring store. Place the label, text label on the bottom, carpet store, New Jersey. Place the logo in the lower right-hand corner. And you can see it did it. And again, this is one of those ones where maybe you use it in a blog post. I probably wouldn't use it in a GBP because this is not what the interior of their store looks like. I'm also not super thrilled with how everything's just a shade of brown. Like you can have any carpet color you want as long as it's a gray or a brown. I think that kind of sends the wrong message to users. But it is now
New Jersey, though, dude. It's New
it's New
Jersey.
Jersey. Yeah, we keep it simple here. But it is now, it's a good image. It's got the keywords in it, and it's got the logo on it as well. So maybe we can set a little geo-relevance. Maybe this might be something fun you could do. I said, give me an image of a road sign that says "Welcome to New Jersey." Believe it or not, we don't have a lot of those. That's not true. We have lots of those. And place the logo of DNR carpet on the lower lower left-hand side of the image. Now it's interesting. The ChatGPT put the logo on the lower left-hand side of the sign, not the image. I did not say sign. I did say image. I double checked my prompt, but I was like, all right, that's absolutely fine. I can still use this. This is still something you could do. And again, it'd be just fine for a blog post or something. And you could probably use this in a GBP. You're not really confusing anybody with this.
Yeah, and it'll let their customers think they're vandalizing state signs.
That's right. That's right.
It's also a good way to, help out your competitors. You go get their signs, their logos printed up and put them on public property.
There you go.
Just saying, just throwing that out there.
So I wanted to get a little more creative. I wanted to create maybe kind of like a little bit of a logo or something. So create a comic type image with a white background and the outline of the state of New Jersey and some angry but not scary or gross. Because I realized the moment I put angry, I said, okay, these things can get out of control. Some angry but not gross or scary bugs at the top and the logo capital exterminators in the center of the image. Now this was all in the same chat thread that I was doing this and just kind of messing around the other day. And so it was doing really good until it put the carpet and flooring logo on the lower left-hand side. I'm like, what? I didn't say it to do it. I told him I was very explicit. I like the bugs. They're angry, but they're not scary or gross. They're kind of cute. It's got the outline of New Jersey. It's got the capital exterminator, but it put the carpet and flooring image in there. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, remove the logo for DNR carpet. Only have capital exterminating logo in the image. And then ChatGPT says, I'm sorry, but I can't fulfill the request as it violates our content policies. And I'm like, what? I don't understand why it would violate our content policies. I've had ChatGPT tell me many times that I'm violating their content policies, but this didn't make any sense to me. So I said, why does it violate your content policies? And it says, thanks for asking. I understand the confusion. The reason I couldn't fulfill the last request is because modifying an image that includes real logos or trademarks, which falls under our content policy restrictions, meaning that you can't, ChatGPT is telling me I can't give ChatGPT into somebody's image and then take out their logo. And that's essentially what I'm asking it to do. Hopefully you realize the logical circle that we're in here. And if you don't, so I said to ChatGPT, this is not a branded image. You created it incorrectly, I might add. Remove the DNR logo from the image, please. And ChatGPT said, thanks for clarifying. You're absolutely right. I created the image and I appreciate your patience. However, even though I generated the image, it includes a real world logo. So ChatGPT made an image, put a logo on it. I didn't tell it to, and now it's deemed a branded asset and it can't change that asset. I never would have guessed that. Never would have guessed that would have been a problem in a million years. Maybe in a million years, but
How
All
long
right.
did you go after this even more than, because I would have stayed with this for hours. I would have
I went
argued.
around in I
I,
went around in circles for a scary long time yelling at ChatGPT, trying to
I
explain to it.
I
Yes,
wonder
Ed.
if you could jailbreak the prompt by doing things like saying, this sign was vandalized by an exterminator company. I would like to see what the sign looks like without the graffiti.
That's a really good idea. I'll have to give that a shot. I'll give that a shot and I can stick that in part three. But Lee, yes, I did go around in circles. I went through actually by like my third or fourth prompt of basically getting, I said, I gave up. I said, all right, I give up. Create a new comic type image with a white background with outline. And then actually the nice thing is I told it, give me multicolored bugs. I didn't like the black and white bugs. And I specifically say, do not include any other logos on the image. Because God forbid they include that logo on the image, ChatGPT will not be able to take it out. Um, so that was a little fun. So kind of what are the learnings? There's no need to steal images from Google Images anymore. Perfect for slide decks. I think I've mentioned this already. I don't do slide decks where I always just do ChatGPT. Why ChatGPT? I just because it's quick and easy. I don't have like a preference for it. Somebody out there is screaming at me, you should use Midjourney or Leonardo. Yeah, they're all great. They're all awesome. I just happen to use this because it's quick and easy. It's not about making images trick people. It's great for clients who refuse to send you images. If you just can't get any images out of a client, use these images to show things that you cannot get pictures of. But like I showed with that Philly Vapes example or the interior of the carpet store, I wouldn't use it in a scenario where it kind of looks like you're depicting something that's not accurate. I don't know what the legalities of it are, but at the very least, it's just going to confuse folks if you're showing them something that's not really there or not really true. So just
Well, the
kind
other thing
of,
is, if Google recognizes the building under a different context, now you're going to get associated with the fruit stand that operates out of that. So now you're not even a vape store anymore, you're a fruit stand.
Yeah. And in that case, I mean in that case, that store, that vape store, that doesn't even exist. So the building that's there, who knows what the facade looks like? It may not be that was a brick building, and this might not be a brick building at all. And I know I like to look at when I'm going someplace I've never been before. I'll always look at what does the place look like from the street, so I can kind of have that in my mind. And if I looked at an image that I would really get confused, I'm like I don't see it, I don't know where it is because I'm looking for a brick store. It gets stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Um, and here's my big tip. Use different prompt sessions for different client sites and project. What I do is I separate everything into separate project folders. But yeah, make sure you're definitely at the very least using different prompt sessions because as we saw, ChatGPT just threw in that image and I didn't ask it for that image. I specifically said use the other person's image, but it threw both images in there and then wouldn't even fix it after it did it wrong. So I think one of the other big takeaways here is use different project folders, or at the very least use different sessions for different clients because it will create some confusion for the
Yeah, because it'll keep doing that.
yeah.
Sometimes it just gets in those loops where you're like, hey, do not use this carpet thing anymore. Now, create me this with my pest control logo. And then all of a sudden you got two logos again, and you're basically training its bad behavior and doubling and tripling the amount of time it takes you to get anything done for your pest control client.
Yep, you're absolutely right. As always, everybody, quick little pitch. Ever struggling with anything, you can always reach out to me. Just Charles Taylor SEO. Super easy to get a hold of. But other than that, I will pass it back to you. Ted, once I stop
All
sharing.
right. Thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you.
Looks like we only have a few questions here. Let me switch to live chat, make sure I'm seeing everything. So if you have questions, let us know. Otherwise, it will be a shorter show today. First question. Recently, we came across a lot of niche websites that are simply clones of each other. I can understand clients hope to rank his website, but it seems Google hates all of them. Um, yeah, if they're too similar, it's not hate. It's what Charles was talking about. It's the duplicate filtering. Because technically you could be totally innocent and have this happen to you, and people do every day. Millions of websites do this accidentally every day. They set up WordPress, they think they know what everything means, they see the little switch for RSS syndication, and sure, why not? What harm could it do? And then they're sharing their content with the world at large, and other sites syndicate it because you turned it on, and boom, now you're being filtered. And so, yeah, I don't
Terry,
think it's Google hates it. That's the part I disagree with. I do agree that it is problematic. And so you need really unique content and purpose for everything you're doing that differentiates in some manner from the other sites.
we've seen for a long time that, sort of that the duplicate content is not a problem in local because, the locations are different. City one is different than city two because there is the geographic filter that goes on there. So you can have duplicate pages or duplicate sites, for different locations, for different geographies. But if we did, Charles Taylor online, and then he bought another domain, C Taylor online, and then Charles the SEO online.com, all those .coms, and through the exact same content, well, now it is, problematic because they're identical sites for national terms. They're all going to be competing, and Google is probably going to pick one version as the canonical version of the site, and the rest of them it's just going to ignore. So when I see something like this, I agreed. Terry threw this in the chat, but I agreed with him because it's the first thought that I had. If you have a lot of duplicate sites and none of them are ranking, basically it looks like you cloned a turd. You have something that was really, really bad. It wasn't good enough to rank in the first place. And you took this, miraculous non-ranking site and said, let's make a bunch of them and see what happens. And so now you've got a bunch of non-ranking sites. So I would look at the optimization of, the mothership first and make sure that that was well done before I ever would consider any sort of cloning.
Yeah, and if it's a client, fix one of them first. Show the client what doing one of them right looks like. And, that way you can make them a believer and have easy street on dealing with them. Because, yeah, if you try to fix them all at once and it takes a lot of time, it's not going to look very good. So, my advice, fix one first.
I would also say that understand there's lots of things that Google takes into account. Let's just assume that your content's good and it can rank. I saw this all the time with the news sites. One of the problems they would have, they'd say, hey, we've got sites that are outranking us for our content because they had a similar problem. They were syndicating out their content and they were doing it intentionally and they were sending it to Bing News, Yahoo News. They were sending it to some big sites. So we had to compete with other large sites for our own darn content. And Google has a bunch of signals it uses to try to figure out who is the originator of the content, and then it filters out the content that it doesn't think is the originator. So timing is a big thing. Links back, what's linking to what. That's another way Google figures out what the canonical is. One of the things we just did is we just made sure that one site went out there first, and then we waited a couple hours, then we syndicated it out. Everyone was behind us 3 hours, and it wasn't a problem at all for our news. If you're trying to make sites that are all exactly the same, again, the first thing I'd say is, does the main site rank? Like just like Lee and Terry said, if the main site doesn't rank, you can clone it as many times as you want. You're still gonna have problems.
Let's see. Simon says, yep, you can make QR codes. That was in reference to ChatGPT. That's good to know. How do you think about attribution? I'm seeing a lot more brand searches to the homepage because of AI overviews. The brand is shown because of another page's SEO, but the homepage gets the credit. Um, I've seen a couple things happening in the AI mode. And so there are different kinds of links. There's some links that are the citations and they go direct to a page. And then there are these other links that are links to another Google search. And so I wonder if you might be getting some of the links to another Google search that you happen to rank in, and it looks like brand. Because Google doesn't share the keywords anymore, so it's hard to know the actual story. So without the keyword information from the referring URL, we don't know what was searched. But I do know that all forms of channel marketing do impact brand search. So in some way, yeah, AI mode will impact brand search too. Same way that TV commercials and magazine ads and billboards and TikTok videos can all lead to brand search.
I
Mhm.
saw that on a client a couple months ago. They were running a bunch. I was actually I was playing an app game and I saw an ad come up for them. I'm like, I didn't know they were doing app ads. And I was talked to the owner, and we after a month we checked the Google Search Console. We saw two things. We saw the brand search increase a little bit, and we saw the direct traffic increase a little bit. So I don't
Mhm.
know, and ultimately it wasn't enough to really make running those ads worthwhile, but it does. To Ted's point, I've seen that live, and I saw it just recently that kind of stuff. It all impacts brand, which is good. Sometimes having your site get a little brand traffic is not a bad thing for SEO in general. So if you're
Yeah,
really having
I
trouble
think
with a site, have a brand, make sure you rank for your brand, maybe do a little brand advertising, get yourself a little brand traffic.
attribution has always been, a nightmare. As soon as there's, multi-channel, if you go back to the early days, you'd have people that would, brands would advertise on TV, and some of that would trickle over onto visits to the website. Some would that you trickle into, visits to the local physical store. Some of that would trickle into calls to the call center, where the person at the call center is taking your order for the item, and you're reading the stuff off of the website because you're looking at the website, but you're not ordering from the website. You're actually calling because you wanted to talk to a person. Now, did the TV ad work? you know, it's hard to tell because you can see, all right, we did the ad over here and we got an increase in store visits over here. We got an increase in website traffic, or we got an increase in calls to the call center. So we know there's some impact, but which ones get tied to, what marketing investment has always been really, really hard. And the web, multiple web channels going through there. You've got different ad platforms, you've got socials, you've got, you still got offline for a lot of big brands as well. It's a nightmare to try to figure out exactly, unless something's a home run, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, when I was a commission-based SEO for a large online retailer, I never tried to claim a part of the homepage. It was just too tangled for attribution. So I wanted definitive SEO gains, and that was always an inner page with, one keyword per page SEO. Um, And so, it's SEOs. You can't claim the branded terms because all channels contribute to them. But as SEOs, you want to make sure there aren't SEO problems with them because they are your responsibility too. Let's see. Do LLM crawlers read schema or no? I mean, they can. Common Crawl is reading the same HTML that Googlebot reads. So, is it technically possible? Absolutely. Now, are they actively using that data in some way? I don't know. Unless you're part of the LLM engineering team, you probably won't know. Any thoughts on that?
I think that's a good answer.
It is testable, so you could create a test schema object on your homepage that has a test keyword in it. And in that schema, you define what the test keyword is. And eventually, if that test keyword becomes findable in an LLM, you know that at least that LLM read it. Let's see. Clint says, put your prompt in JSON and see if it reads it. I send JSON to ChatGPT as an input all the time. I haven't tried the whole prompt, but I have said, in the following JSON, I describe, dot, 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 please do X with it. Let's see. All right. Yeah, it's following up. Clint had a link of an example. So if you need an example, reach out to Clint. Let's see. Do cloud links still work, Lee?
Yeah, I don't differentiate among, cloud links, PBN links, Web 2 links. They all, have their place and their power and everything else. It just depends on what's behind the damn link. If you just go and create a cloud bucket and stick something in there, it's not going to have much power. But if you have it as part of a larger thing with, links coming in and traffic and all those other things, then it's a whole lot more powerful, just like any other link. So yes, they still work.
All right. Let's
In
see.
spite of the proclamations that, we live in an AI world and links and content no longer matter. SEO's dead.
What if my page isn't top 100 for an exact keyword, example, blue car, but number one for exact keyword plus random keyword, even one that isn't on the page or doesn't exist? Blue car, A, B, C, D, E. Well, it's a different search. So you're taking something that nobody has an exact match of. So when you add that A, B, C, D, E, and you're switching the scoring because now nobody gets the exact match score component, and it switches to broad match, which is then going to look for instances of blue and instances of car in different places. And so, yeah, if you switch the context from exact match to broad match, that's a different scoring system.
Yeah, and if you did the same thing and it took your page and search for cat videos A B C D E, you're going to see your page with the fake keyword, and then you're going to see a whole bunch of other pages about cat videos. So you're the only one that qualifies, for the unique aspect of that search, which is your fake keyword.
Yeah, and this is the reason why Seattle Plumber and Plumber Seattle are two different searches, because I guarantee the exact match on your page for both of those are different amounts. You probably didn't tune them the same. Let's see. Is this a penalty? Should I create a new page? If so, should I use a 301? I don't think it's a penalty. I
No.
haven't seen anything that's a problem, really. You're not competitive for the exact match. I think what you need is some data. You need to use a tool that can show you how your page is different from the higher ranking pages, and you need to correct some of those differences. And I know we all, intuitively think that our SEO is good and enough. But without the measurements, you don't actually know that, and it's usually not true.
Mhm.
So I would say get some data on how you're different from those higher ranking pages.
So I like that a lot, Ted. Like getting more information, especially when we get questions that we don't have the information. But how can you find more information? So for the person who asked the question, so the big question always is, did I get penalized? Am I penalized? Well, you can go into Search Console and see if there's a manual penalty. Now I realize that folks over there, but it doesn't show you an algorithmic penalty. That's true, assuming algorithmic penalties still exist or ever existed. I don't know they ever existed. It could have just all been filters. But you can go into Search Console and you can look and see, do you have a penalty? Do you have any security warnings on your site? You can also, I would inspect that page. What does Google see? Does Google even see the page? You can do a site colon command. So site colon your domain space the primary keyword. What pages show up? Does your page, your target page show up as number one, or does some other page show up as number one? So there's a lot of things that really need to be checked to figure out, what exactly is going on. The more direct questions, hey, if I have a penalty, should I not? I wouldn't redirect a penalty page to a non-penalty page. You could try creating a new page, but there's a lot more information you need to gather to figure out what's wrong with this page before you start creating new pages or redirecting or anything like that. Um, my
Yeah,
guess is it might just be might just be a lot more competitive than you
Yeah.
realize.
yeah,
And
a fake, a
if
fake
Google had turned you into scorched earth, then you wouldn't rank for any keywords. The fact that you rank for some is a clue.
Yeah. And a fake keyword, just qualifies you for searches for that fake keyword. It's makes good things for testing to make sure that certain things are happening. But the fake keyword doesn't qualify you for blue car, in any way. So those are completely different questions. So
All right. Have you guys heard anything about Google using hashes to check for duplicate content? Just heard about this. Yeah, this goes back to a couple of leaks. One was from Gary Iles, or Ilias, however you say his last name. My apologies if I got it wrong in both cases. And what was his name? The JavaScript guy, Martin Split. So there was an off the record podcast where Gary talked about protocol buffers, what's in them, and what they can do with them. And Martin Split later on a different podcast talked about them too and what they can do with them. And the way Martin described them is a comparable fingerprint. And so they have these hashes where they can say how different is page A from page B. And so when they compare those, it gives them a relative measurement of how similar or dissimilar any two pages are. And I'm not entirely sure how that works. My theory, my hunch on it is that they're reducing your main content down to a frequency distribution of important terms. And then they're looking at how close or how far those curves align. And so if the curves are mostly the same, then it's mostly duplicate because you have the same information as the other guy in the same proportions.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts on this theory craft? And this is totally unknown stuff, but yeah, if you look for the off the record on protocol buffers, that's probably the one to get. And I don't know how to direct you to the Martin Split one. You'd have to watch every Martin Split video, and he made a lot.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Um, does good SEO rank you in LLMs, or what is the main differences between ranking in LLMs versus Google? Um, well, I think there are a couple things. If the LLM goes live to search, there's some hope for you. Um, if it doesn't go live to search, then the LLM had to be trained with your information included. And so if you weren't part of the crawl that trained the LLM, then the LLM isn't going to know about you or your personal entities like your business and your name. Um, so the way you probably want to get into them is to make sure that your robots.txt and your Cloudflare aren't blocking Common Crawl and other LLM bots. That's step one. Step two, you want to focus on your branding. You want to focus on your knowledge graph entries. You want to make sure that you're turning your brands into new entities. And, the more you do that, the more this whole ecosystem is going to include you. But if you don't do branding, if you don't give a crap about entities, if you're just kind of winging it, it's probably going to be a hard go. Um, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it depends on, what it is that you're looking at. If I ask ChatGPT, who's the best plumber in Seattle, it's going to go do a search, and ChatGPT pulls from Bing data. So basically, if you rank, on page one of Bing, you have an opportunity to be part of the answer that it looks for. If you ask Gemini, it's going to go to Google because it's a Google property. If you ask, Claude, I'm not sure where they're searching from. I know that their training data is from the Common Crawl, but I don't know where they're pulling their search results from.
Yeah,
It's
and
probably not
sometimes
Google because Google doesn't play nice with others. So
sometimes it's from search, and sometimes it's a weird aggregate of listicles. So, the top 50 from Moz and the top 50 from Ahrefs, and
yeah,
you get some sort of aggregate for being on those list style articles. So, yeah, I would also think about those too. How much content is out there putting you in that space?
yeah. But ultimately, the difference in rankings is that, LLMs and search engines have different algorithms, they have different data sets. And so, you have to treat them separately as goals.
Let's see. What's most important in backlinks? DR, anchor text, niche relevant sites, country code TLDs, content in before and after the anchor text. Um, I would say you just want relevant anchor text. You ideally want it from a relevant page. And uh, you want to try and get your links for as close to free as you can, because eventually in the scaling, that's the only thing that's going to move you after a certain point. Um, yeah, the content before and after, that's like saying that you're putting it in the middle of the main content or a paragraph, and those are known to be beneficial. But you can still rank sites with footer links. Not all links are equal, but there's still a path to the top any way you go.
Yeah, Clinton just dropped his thing and he just simplified it down to anchor text.
Yeah, at a minimum, anchor text. Let's see. Got a site with a money page and a home page that are competing for the money page's primary keyword. So a money page and a home page, and they're
Think of it as a
different.
service, a service or a category
Okay.
in your homepage, if you're in a product side thing. So, with in local, that happens a bunch of times. People get pissed off about that because their, homepage just says, Kubaitis plumbing, we do this, this, and this, and then you're clicking off to other pages that have, you know, 1,500 2,000 words of content, beautifully optimized image. This is where you want people because this is where the form to fill or the call now, and all those sort of things are. And a lot of times Google will rank that homepage because it's got more authority. I mean, most websites, the vast majority of websites, the link power is concentrated on that homepage. So even though its content is less, its authority can be higher. And so it's not a lot you can do about that. And Google sometimes in local, I know, goes back and forth between as a preference for, home pages and internal pages, all other things being equal. I can't speak to that on product type sites, e-com sites in terms of, category versus homepage.
Well, definitely in e-com, to avoid cannibalization, you want to do the reverse priorities. Normally, everybody focuses on the home page, then they do the categories, and then if there's time at the end, they'll work on some of the product pages. To avoid cannibalization, you actually want to do it the other way. You want to strongly tune the product pages for the product keyword. Then you strongly tune the category pages for the category keyword. Then you strongly tune the home page for the home page keyword. And that way, your product pages stand a much better chance of ranking for the product keywords. Because if you never got to the product pages, of course, the home page and the category are going to be ranking in place of them.
One thing I would suggest, and I'm suggesting this because I know who's asking the question. I think I know what site she's talking about. My first question would be, does the homepage rank horribly compared to the target page? Like, I know we want the target page to rank. I totally get that. But if the homepage is still converting people, I'm not going to say I wouldn't worry about it, but I wouldn't panic over it. And one thing I would definitely throw out there, sometimes folks will come to me and say, oh, my homepage is outranking my interior page, or I have two interior pages fighting. I'm going to de-optimize the one I don't want to rank. And my approach is always optimize the one you want to rank first. Get that moving up before you even think about de-optimizing anything, because you could de-optimize yourself off the rankings completely, and then you may not get it back with any page. So just don't go down just be careful going down the de-optimization rabbit hole. I've
Yeah,
done that to
yeah.
myself.
Pruning content and pruning pages, that is always the last thing you try. It should never be the first thing you try, and especially pruning content off a page. That has a success rate of about 50%. And I know it from historic anecdotal evidence where people would come to me and say, I did this and it went up, and I did this again and then it went down, and then I did this and it went up, and there's just so much of it. What it turned out is that people were deleting text off the page, which was randomly changing the keyword density. So if you were mindful about the important words of the page when you made the deletion, you typically went up. But if you just blindly cut away a third of the page, that's a roll of the dice.
It's easy for us as SEOs, especially, and I do this all the time, to get fixated on ranking or traffic for something. And it's really like, it goes back to the discussion we had a couple months ago about KPIs. Is your KPI getting addressed? I worked for an e-commerce site. They had these basically blog articles that were doing very well. They brought in great traffic, but people weren't converting. They were reading the article, then leaving. And the director of marketing wanted to get rid of the articles. I said, well, wait, before we start deleting things, let's put a link to products in there, and let's put a pop-up that gets people to sign up for our email address, our email list. And the moment we put the email pop-up in there, we just loaded up our email list like crazy. And suddenly he loved the pages. The pages that he was going to delete in January, by June, he absolutely loved them and wanted to know how could we get more and get them ranking better. So sometimes it's just more of a strategy, a business strategy than an SEO strategy.
All right, let's see. I'm thinking about self-reported attribution. How did you hear about us in contact forms? There are ways of doing like campaign management within the URLs that you put out there. And if you use those tools, then you can do a lot of that automatically. So what's coming from where, you even know the versions of the ad copies, and there's a lot of tools out there for campaign tracking. Let's see. I must add that Blue Car KK brings up almost the same top 10 results. Yeah, and it will, but you're changing the scoring. So, they all have the same amount of factors. They all have you're just taking the same scenario where exact matches are the strongest scoring component. You're eliminating that because nobody tuned for Blue Car KK. And so now everybody's competing on the broad match of blue and car and KK. And so, yeah, you're just playing with the scoring. And I know it feels confusing, but just realize that if you tuned your page for Seattle Plumber, all the exact occurrences of Seattle Plumber benefit you. But when you search for Plumber Seattle, you didn't tune for that. So you have the broad match, you still can compete at some level, but you didn't do the tuning right for the other term. Let's see. How do you rank in Google AI overviews? I've heard a number of people say that if you do good SEO, you can often get in there. I've heard a number of people say schema, um, you know, and I've heard myself say it's good if you are in the training set. Um, I think, yeah, you want to be careful about what you block with Cloudflare and robots.txt. You want to make sure that you're focused on brands and that you're establishing entities where you can. And schema might be able to help you with that. It's probably part of the recipe. Um, and I would take it from there and I would wait to see what, the case studies from all the gurus, come out and say in the next 6 months or so. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen from the data, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, is that it looks like for the most part, if you're ranking, high on page one, you have a better than average shot of, being in the AI overview. There are a number of different techniques that I've seen people do that work, and they're basically your different ways of feeding additional information to the algorithm, but most are either dependent on, the keyword that you're after being a very long tail, like, does Ted Kubaitis wear different color socks? Nobody cares about, but hey, I can pop the AI overview for it. Or
Well, people care.
yeah, people do care. Oh wow.
Yep.
You know what? I'll just join your OnlyFans page. That's all I'm saying. But then on the flip side of it, if you're ranking, well, like we had one slide a couple of weeks ago where mesothelioma, the person ranking in position 1 was in the overview, and the person ranking in position 6, and I was like, well, if I was in positions 2, 3, 4, or 5, I'd say that's bullshit. And I would do some things to try to get that additional information in there, but I can't reveal people's stuff that I've learned from them because it's proprietary. But there's a lot of people out there that are sharing sort of some techniques and things they're doing with schema, some things that are other link things that they may be doing, or other content things they may be doing. If you're really, really interested in that, I will tell you that this week, end of this week, Holly Stark's having a dark AI conference. We'll be there. And I know that 3 people are training on exactly that. So if you really want to know, just hit that up and do the virtual. It's too late to attend live. All the tickets are gone for live, but virtual tickets will be on sale for the next couple of days. So
Let's see. Would a link to an authoritative site benefit a non-authoritative site? So an outbound link from your page to a place that matters. I think the primary benefit of doing that is to disambiguate your topic. So if you have a web page about SEO, Google can understand that faster and better if you're linking to relevant pages about SEO, like the Webmaster Guidelines and the Quality Raters Guidelines and the Mobile Friendliness Tool and Moz's study on top factors, and those types of things can be beneficial for just understanding the topic of your page. Um, so in that sense, I believe so. And those are entities. They're driving up your entity count, and the anchor text you give to those links are probably relevant entities as well. So, for disambiguation and topical relevancy, plus it's driving up entities on the page, beneficial factor in my book. What do you guys think?
a few years ago, it used to be there was a hack that was discovered and out there where if you linked to Wikipedia, so if I'm a plumber and I linked to Wikipedia's plumbing page, it was a boost. And then that went out there and everybody was doing it. And then Google started, they shut that shit down and said, knock it off. But the question that I never saw answered, I haven't seen any tested data, although there may be some out there, is does it work with other authority sites? Did they just shut down Wikipedia, or did they shut down, sort of the outbound linking benefit? And that I don't know.
And I would also wonder, so because Lee, I've seen some things that make me wonder if this works. I've seen some things on either somebody knows something, because I've seen other backlink data when I've been on sites, large sites. Is it the site or is it the page? So if Ted links to my high authority site, but the page has no authority or is poor relevance, does that help him? But if he links to my site that has a page that's, an authority page and or at least well optimized and Google knows what the page is about, is that better? Is it more like he said, is it an understanding of the subject, or is it like some kind of reverse authority pass? I don't know. I've been tempted to try to test it out, but I haven't.
It's tricky
Yeah.
to design a good clean test on that, because when you start to look at like the authority of the page that you're linking to, we can't see inside of Google's link graph and know, we can use these third-party tools, but we know that those are flawed.
I feel like 8 or 9 years ago, at least, maybe even more, I feel like SIA did a test around this, and I feel like they said that it did help, but I can't remember for sure. I could be way off. And even if they did come through with a positive, again, this is like 8 or 9 years ago minimally, so a lot has changed in 8 or 9 years, so it may not do anything now.
All right, guys, really sorry to do this, but I have a bit of an issue here at home, so I gotta end the show. And sorry if we didn't get to your questions this time. We'll see you next.